Good afternoon. I'm Leon Davis, and it is actually 4 o'clock. Well, actually, 4 minutes after four. I had a little problem earlier when I tried to stream, so I am doing a restream. Anyway, today's topic for the podcast is personality politics. And at first thought, it might be my favorite whipping horse, American politics, but it is not. It is about communication. It is about building things. It's about getting to a place where we're able to do better. And that's coming up right now.
Welcome to Altitude Adjustment.
All right. Thank you very much for joining me this afternoon, wherever you're listening in. Communication is all important for us as a society. We're not born with the ability to communicate. It is something that we learn. So we pick up different habits and different ways of communicating, and then we're all different people. Actually, we are pretty much a contained unit. Everything that we have, we used for getting things done. Now, our ability to communicate is what allows us to work together. If I ask for a brick or a hammer, being able to communicate is how I get that done. We need to work together to get things done. Usually, no, one person can't do it all. So it requires the effort of a community. It requires the effort of a team of people getting things done. And the only way that we can do that is if we have communication, if we have ways of saying things that or communicating so that we get specifically what we're asking for. And one of the things that I usually point to about communications is if I say a dragon, would you know I meant a purple dragon, about 2 inches tall, with wings. So once the communication starts, it has to be refined, and there's a lot that goes into communication. It's very complicated. Communication may seem simple, but it becomes simple after years and years because you hone those skills and you know which things to provide in order to communicate your message. And without the communication, where would we be? How would we get things done? And so communication is actually about getting things done. And currently in our development as a country, we are going through a period where communication is being challenged. Our ability to share ideas and thoughts and the ability to recognize one another's thought, ideas, and things that help us get things done are being challenged. And so one of the things that I thought I would do, especially for this podcast, was at least try to provide one tool that would help us develop better communication skills. Now, some people accept psychology. Some people are a lot more skeptical, but it is just a tool, and it's may not be a perfect science, as we individuals are very complex in how we present information, and things that we use to process information is different. And so there has to be some shared information on how to communicate that allows us to understand what one person means versus what I mean by saying something. And two people can look at something and describe it differently. And we need to be able to make the translation from what a person is communicating to me being able to understand that communication and have the same image as I mentioned, like the dragon. So in order for you to know exactly what I'm thinking, I have to find a way to communicate with you that identifies exactly what I'm talking about. So currently, or I ain't gonna say currently, but a lot of things go into how we process information, how we accept information, how we grow, how we learn to communicate with one another. And so my concern is that we're moving towards a situation where we're not communicating so it breaks down our ability to work together. And an example of the difficulty with communicating is recently I was on Facebook and I was sharing something with someone, and the subject of R. Kelly came up, and there's a documentary out, The Surviving R. Kelly, and so my first thought was that would be interesting to see. I don't know what to expect from it, but it would be interesting to see. But someone said to me, well, I'm not going to watch it because it's all propaganda. This person hasn't seen it, doesn't know what's contained in it, and yet, without any reservation, just dismissed it. Now, realizing that television is not a perfect medium, meaning there are situations where people create things for reasons that don't meet your criteria for why that material should exist. But to just dismiss material without having seen it or in any way understand what was put together and why it was put together, says, if we don't find a way to communicate with each other, to listen, to find that, what is worth listening to, what is worth hearing, how do we pursue facts and information, then we could close our eyes to what's important. We can close our eyes to the ability to make better decisions because of shared information. So I was disappointed by that because it says that this person has just closed their mind to any of the possibilities. Let's presume that it was propaganda. Let's presume that, but you don't know if it's propaganda if you don't at least watch a couple of moments of it. Just to dismiss it summarily says, I'm not going to hear anything that differs from my view of what I want the world to look like. And when that happens, it's hard for us to find shared ideas so that we can communicate, so that we can build something better. That means, if we don't take opportunities to enlighten ourselves, to enrich ourselves, to better our communication skills, we will decline. We will go backwards. We will not be able to work together, or we'll only be able to work together with a few people. And the way society is, the way man is our survival depends on one another. It depends on us being able to understand one another, to get things done, to build shelters, to forage for food, to make those things happen. Those are necessary. And so I ran across this tool, and I've been a big fan of psychology for decades. And there's a tool, and you can't, I ain't gonna say you can't, because I don't that is not my life's work. And I don't spend as much time as necessary to be absolutely fluent in aspects of psychology and psychology and psychoanalysis and behavior. I do want to know enough so that I can intelligently talk about it, that I can intelligently apply it in my life. In 1971, Gustav Jung, he was a Swiss psychiatrist and psychoanalyst, presented his theory of psychological types, where people can be characterized by their preference of general attitude. So he created three dichotomies, three categories where there was one aspect of human behavior which is polar opposite to another aspect of human behavior. So the first category was extroverted versus introverted. Now each category, each characteristic is represented by a letter. So extroverted is represented by E, introverted is represented by I. Now, as I said, he started with 6 categories, the first being extroverted versus introverted. The second was sensing versus intuition. And then thinking versus feeling. Now, these 3 areas introduced by Jung are, as I said, dichotomies, and they're supposed to help or show the dominant behavior or functionality that the individual exhibits. In 1980, Isabel Briggs Myers, a researcher and practitioner of Jung's theory, proposed adding an additional category is judging and perceiving. That became the 4th category. Judging represented by J and perceiving represented by P. Now, at first glance, you may think judging means something a little different, but I encourage you to look. When I first encountered it, it wasn't what I expected as judging, as in when I say someone is judging someone else. So I'll give a quick whatever about the different categories. The first being extroversion, and introversion. That signifies the source and direction of a person's energy expression, where they get the most energy for their behavior. An extrovert's source of direction of energy is mainly the external world outside of themselves, while an introvert has mainly themselves or internal world where they get their energy. For sensing and intuition, they represent the method by which someone perceives information. Sensing means that a person mainly believes information that he or she receives directly from an external source or outside world. Intuition, of course, being the polar opposite, is that a person believes mainly information he or receives from their internal world or imagination. Thinking and feeling represents how a person processes the information. Thinking means that a person makes a decision mainly through logic, while feeling, as a rule, he or she makes a decision based on emotion and how they feel that things should be. The judging and perceiving category reflects how a person implements the information he or she has processed. Judging means that a person organizes all of his life's events, his or her life's events, and as a rule sticks to their plans. Perceiving means that he or she is inclined to improvise and explore alternative options. Now, none of these options are hard and fast, which means in a given situation or at a given time, a person may exhibit a proportion of a category that they are most prone to. So where an extrovert may be an extrovert 90% or 70% of the time, they may exhibit introverted category behavior in some instances. So this is more of a guideline to work with and not a hard and fast rule. Along with, so there's a test that they provide on the website, and you'll find the URL in the podcast description. So wherever you get the podcast, look for the website, and there's a test on there where you can test your sense and sensibilities. So because of the dynamic there's 16 outlined personality traits or personality types that the young Briggs-Myers theory provides. And I'm going to go over a couple of them just briefly to kind of give you an idea of some of the differences and how that breaks down. And it wasn't a lot of technical information or a lot of technical terms that would be industry specific. So it was, but it was reading that may prompt you to do some additional investigation in order to understand it. So each personality type has a 4-letter connotation. So let me pull up this first one. Now, this is a personality type ENFP. That's extroverted, intuitive, feeling, perceiving person. Now, ENFPs are both idea people and people. They see everyone and everything as part of a cosmic whole. They want to both help and to be liked and admired by other people on both an individual and a humanitarian level. This is rarely a problem for the ENFP, as they are outgoing and warm and genuinely like people. Some ENFPs have a great deal of zany charm, which can ingratiate them to a more stodgy types in spite of their unconventionality. Now, some of this may, well, I'm gonna say some of it. So there were parts of it that when I was reading through that, made me think of that it was for fun, this wasn't serious business. But as again, you have to keep in mind that these are not hard and fast rules, and they're just a guideline to give you an idea of what a person with those traits, the ENFP traits, might be like. Now, as again, they may do that more or less, exhibit those traits more or less, depending on the situation. They also says that ENFPs have strong, if sometimes surprising, values and viewpoints. They tend to try to use their social skills and contacts to persuade others gently though enthusiastically, of the rightness of these views, and this sometimes results in the person neglecting their nearest and dearest while caught up in their efforts to change the world. So there was one other thing I wanted to mention about the ENFPs. The ENFP's primary source of information, the physical world, both Geos and Cosmos, is the ENFP's primary source of information. Rather than sensing things as they are, dominant intuition is sensitive to the things as they might be. These extroverted intuitives are most adept with patterns and connections. Their natural inclination is toward relationships, especially among people and living things. Intuition leans heavily on feeling for meaning and focus. Its best patterns reflect the interesting points of people, giving rise to characters of manner, speech, and expression. Auxiliary feeling is non-verbally implied more often than it is openly expressed. When expressed, this logic has an aura of romance and purity that may seem out of place in this flawed, imperfect world. In its own defense, feeling judgment frequently and fleetly gives way to humor. ENFPs who publicize their feelings too often may put off some of the crowd of friends they naturally attract. So this one was an interesting one. When I did some research, it said that about 1 to 3% of the population are INFPs. That's introverted, intuitive, feeling, perceiving. And I found this one interesting. INFPs never seem to lose their sense of wonder. One might say they see life through rose-colored glasses. It's as though they live at the edge of a looking glass world where mundane objects come to life, where flora and fauna take on near human qualities. INFP children often exhibit this in a Calvin and Hobbes fashion. And I don't know if you're familiar with Calvin and Hobbes, but Calvin was a little boy who carried on, had a relationship with his stuffed tiger, which, talked to him, and they had these great discussions and did these wonderful things together. So they switch from reality to fantasy and back again. With few exceptions, it is the NF child who readily develops imaginary playmates. INFPs live primarily in a rich inner world of introverted feeling. Being inward turning, the natural attraction is away from the world and toward essence and ideal. This introversion of dominant feeling, receiving its data from extroverted intuition, must be the source of the quixotic nature of these usually gentle beings. Feeling is caught in the approach, avoidance, bind between concern, both for people and for all creatures, great and small, and a psychomagnetic repulsion from the same. The object, be it a Homo sapiens or a mere representation of an organism, is valued only to the degree that the object contains some measure of the inner essence of greater good. Doing a good deed, for example, may provide intrinsic satisfaction, which is only secondary to the greater good of striking a blow against man's inhumanity to man. So these people not fair. So INFPs are thinking, feeling people, easily hurt, attaches to individuals quickly. So they're not necessarily, when you think of shy introverts, that doesn't mean that they back away from the world. It's just how they process information from the world. So they mostly stick to what's internal, and they feel more than they logic and reason. So when they're processing something, so like in a business transaction or something like that, they may be more prone to handle it from an emotional standpoint than from a logical or reasonable standpoint. So this is a tool, and as I said, you can go to the website and take the test. I'm not going to share with you what I was. I think it would be interesting that you would be able to tell me what you think I am based upon any things that you've seen on the internet or any things that you might read into my posts or anything. So with that, I'm going to say it has been a wonderful time this evening. I want to thank you very much for spending a little time with me. Now, it's time for me to close. And there we go. So the podcast is streamed live each week on YouTube. And so it's there for you to have an opportunity to ask questions and include your thoughts. To participate, please visit the website for information that you'll need to participate with Altitude Adjustment, and feel free to connect with me on Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, and YouTube. Also, be sure to look for this and other episodes where you listen to podcasts and comment if you get a chance. Your likes and shares, and I always say this, are internet gold. So please like and share this podcast where you find it. Also, remember to be cool, be calm, and above all, be careful. Look out for the other guy because they may not be looking out for you.